This past weekend, we started a new series at church called Upside Down, and it's going through the Beatitude portion of the Sermon on the Mount and looking at some of the statements that Jesus made that, from a purely human perspective, seem a little upside down. And Jesus was pretty famous for this, I think. If you've spent any time in the Gospels reading the things that he said, often from a human perspective, those things seem like they're turned around, like they don't quite fit into the way that we think of life. And one example of that is found in Mark chapter 12, starting in verse 41. It says, He, Jesus, sat down opposite the treasury and began observing how the people were putting money into the treasury. And many rich people were putting in large sums. A poor widow came and put in 2 small copper coins, which amount to a cent. Calling his disciples to him, he said to them, Truly I say to you, this poor widow put in more than all the contributors to the treasury. For they all put in out of their surplus, but she, out of her poverty, put in all she owned, all she had to live on. And on just first glance reading that, you can go, how could she, who just put in something amounting to a cent, put in more than all of the other people combined? And Jesus explained that. He said that the difference is they put in out of their abundance. They put in out of their surplus. They put in what they could spare, kind of the leftovers. She put in the first. She put in all she had to live on. And I think the point of this story, the point of this illustration, as Jesus looked at the treasury and saw that woman, isn't that no rich people can be true followers of Jesus. No rich people can truly be giving to the kingdom. Nor do I think the point is that all of us need to give all we have to live on. I think what Jesus is pointing to here is the woman's trust. By putting in all, she had to trust God to provide. The people who put in the leftovers, their surplus, out of their abundance, they didn't have to trust God to provide. They were providing for themselves. And I think that's a good lesson for us to learn, not just in our finances, but in every area of our life. Are we giving God the leftovers? Are we giving God the things that we think we could spare? Are we giving God those things that are just a little bit out of our abundance, when we should be giving God the first things, when we should be giving God something that indicates that we have to trust Him for provision. Rick and I went to a pastor's conference a number of years ago, and the speaker there was a man by the name of Howard Hendricks, who was a famous Bible teacher, and he was talking about Noah. And he asked this question that has really stuck with me. He said, what are you doing today that requires faith? What kind of service, what kind of giving, what in your life requires faith? What in your life requires that you have stepped out of that comfortable place where we feel like, I can handle this? And instead, we are in that uncomfortable place where we feel like, I need God, and I'm going to trust Him to provide. I would encourage you this week, as we begin to think about these upside-down sayings of Jesus, to look at your life and consider, what is it that you are trusting God for? What in your life right now is requiring faith? What are you stepping out and taking a risk in your life, whether that is in the area of your giving, whether it's in the area of how you spend your time, whether it's in the area of a conversation that you feel like you need to have, but you're worried about the outcome. I would encourage you to look at those things and to say, God, I want to grow in my faith. And the way that we grow is by allowing ourselves to be in situations where we have to trust God. One thing that I have learned in my years of life is that God can be trusted, and I hope you will find that to be true this week.